So is there a difference in terms of like geopolitical repercussions of the structure if it was a floating structure or a fixed one?
Right. I think that's a really important question. And I think what we've learned, since, especially since General Bronner's interview today, or yesterday, I guess your time, is that it was in fact a floating structure because it is now in the middle of the lagoon. And so I do think that's actually a little bit more reassuring that it's not something that has been erected on the shoal itself. That makes it a little less like inhabiting an uninhabited feature. And instead, you're looking at just sort of tethering something to the shoal. That doesn't mean it's that we shouldn't worry about it because these things tend to start small, as we've seen in the past, like with other reefs and things out there. So it definitely bears very close watching, but I think it's less worrying than if it were actually a fixed structure on the shoal.
General Bronner also said that they will do everything to stop China from building up whatever it is that they're trying to do at Scarborough Shoal. But I'm worried about how they would do that operationally because, as you said, China, even the fishermen, and of course even the our Coast Guard, they're trying to block them off the shoal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think that that's why everybody gets concerned when you see a 6x6 raft, all of a sudden appear on the shoal, because you're afraid that that's going to, again, they're going to start with that one tiny little thing, and then the next thing you know, it's got stilts, and the next thing you know, it's got a power generation, and and it just keeps building and building, and pretty soon you also notice then that when China declared a nature reserve at Scarborough Shoal, it was only over about a third of the shoal. So, that makes the rest of us think, well, yeah, that means they might still build something at the other two-thirds. Now, I think that China has a couple of things that constrain it. I think that if these things didn't exist,
Mhm.
China might have already built there. One is the DOC, because China likes to pretend that it abides by the DOC. It does not in many ways, and I've documented this over and over again by the way that they increase tensions, the way that they um, uh, use the force and threat of force. All of these things are clear violations of the DOC. But on the very narrow question of do we inhabit previously uninhabited features, China has kind of tried to keep on the, be able to say, yeah, we don't do that. So if they were to inhabit Scarborough Shoal, that would be pretty clearly a violation, which is, again, why we kind of look at these little cues, because maybe they tried to do it really slowly and come up with little excuses. So that's why we all worry about it.
Yeah.
Uh, now, so one thing that keeps them from doing it is the DOC. Another thing I think is the United States,
Mhm.
because I think that the U.S. is watching this very, very closely. This is one of those things. We were kind of asleep 10 years ago when China did its first island building campaign because nobody could quite believe that they were doing it. And nobody really seemed to have a plan, including the U.S. I was in Vietnam at the time, and I think the Vietnamese were waiting for us to come up with our brilliant plan, and we didn't seem to have one. But I think we are awake now, and I think we are watching Scarborough Shoal very closely. And so I, you know, I can only assume that there are some very strong messages being sent, not just from Manila, but from Washington to Beijing, saying, "Yeah, we're not okay if all of a sudden you start doing something out there." And so, and of course, Xi Jinping is trying to make nice with Washington right now. So it may be that they don't want to do anything to blatantly inhabit Scarborough Shoal, but this little raft could be kind of a test. See, well, let's see how they respond to this. I mean, that's very very consistent with how they've done gray zone operations in the past.
Oh, well, just one more thing, because we have more information, right, about the structure. So, General Bronner described it as a six by 6 meter platform with six people on board it, and that is reflective. Do you have any idea what it might be now with that? No, it's not so.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's very possible that it's some kind of a, scientific or environmental survey platform. Um, it doesn't sound like it's something that's used for, say, fishing or something to that effect. It could be used for meteorology. I mean, this is a lot of possibilities as to what it is. There, and, I mean, if you're going to put people out there, they're probably it's very possible they're just studying something. Now, China 2 years ago put out a report that gave Scarborough Shoal a very healthy grade as far as how environmentally secure it was, what the environment was like. I happen to know that right before they put out that report, they kicked out all of their giant clam harvesters. And I think the reason they kicked out all their giant clam harvesters is because giant clam harvesting is an extremely destructive activity. And almost certainly they had done great damage to the shoal. So I think the glowing report was for our benefit. They knew that there was nobody to check their work because they won't let anybody else out there. And so we pretty exhaustively documented why we thought the shoal was in bad shape. So it may be that they're just sending some people out there to see if the shoal is recovering. Again, they won't tell us that because they've already told us the shoal looks great 2 years ago. The fact that we don't believe them doesn't bother them. But so I think it's possible that they could just be doing an environmental study, especially if they're moving inside the lagoon. So that would make sense because that's where so much of that giant clam harvesting was taking place.